I have been told a Negroni is not a Negroni unless it has an orange slice. So I ordered one. Not sure if it will make it here before the end of corrections. I am confused about something. I read the correction comments every week, and people often will ask questions that have been answered within the body of a previous corrections. People will say, what is he drinking? I've said Negroni in multiple corrections. How are you not watching all of these? Like, it doesn't work if you don't watch all of these. Do you watch Game of Thrones? Well, I catch it when it's on. What? You gotta watch all of these. So many of the questions. What am I drinking? A Negroni. Did you know Doug Jones was the original Mac Tonight? I do. Why is Closer Look not on in Canada anymore? Because you're bad listeners. I was told VHS tapes don't play backwards if you put them in upside down. Agree to disagree? Last week, I called out Sal Gentile and said he was wrong in his interpretation of the landmark Supreme Court case, Marbury v. Madison. Sal was right, it turns out. But by calling him out in corrections, I did inadvertently get Sal into the Guinness Book of World Records for longest mutter. Really had to talk Sal off. He wanted to write a closer look about YouTube commenters. We talked about Scooby-Doo last week and how he said Rutrow. I was told by many of you, Astro from the Jetsons was the originator of Rutrow. Interesting fact here. The actor who did Astro would later go on to voice Scooby-Doo. And that must have been a very weird call from his agent. He's like, hey, baby, I got you the lead in a new pilot. He's like, oh, that's great. Anything as long as I'm not doing another cartoon dog, if you know what I mean. You still there? Ruh-roh. This is a correction I had a hard time wrapping my head around. Correction, Scooby-Doo isn't a dog. In later seasons, it established that Scooby isn't actually an alien known as an Anunnaki, a race of ancient creatures that can cross universes and take over the form of animals. I'm not sure what season that plot point was established, but I'm gonna guess the last one. Ratings are down. Should we throw this Hail Mary? Kids like space, right? Last week I addressed, one of you said my Shaggy impression sounded like Werner Herzog. I put that to bed. But then one of you this week said, when you heard me say my Shaggy sounded like Werner Herzog, you thought it was the singer Shaggy. It wasn't me. Yes, you caught me on the counter. It wasn't me. I believe you believe. You saw me banging on the sofa. But it wasn't me. A lot of you said Jacob Marley is a ghost. The other three are spirits. Can you really tell the difference between a spirit and a ghost? I know you can tell the difference between a spirit and a JetBlue. Baze, I did it just like you said. Then lean forward like you're proud of it. It's Thanksgiving, not April Fool's Bays. You know, we've been talking about Devin, the 28-year-old teenager who turns up a lot on our show. He turned up twice in a week, and then one of you said, I think you've used him more than just 2 times. And you know, there's this consensus building that young people don't like to work anymore, but let me tell you something about this kid. Does a shift at DQ. Then he goes over to Burger King. Then he goes to Chipotle. He heads over to Kinko's. Yeah, sure, then he toilet papers my house. But next morning, he's at the amusement park. Then it's off to Dunkin' Donuts, Best Buy. Then he breaks his leg. And then it's over to 7-Eleven. Thank you for your work, Devin. Someone wrote this comment. This show sucks. He must be paying that phony audience to laugh. Sounds like about 10 people, LOL. First of all, dude. It used to be 10, but then we let the interns start coming, and it's 16. I was actually worried our audience would be a little thin today because, you know, a lot of our crew has left to get to the airport for the holiday. We have a diverse crew from all over the country, everywhere from the top of New Jersey to the middle of Long Island. Oh, thank you. Okay. Hey, honey, what? You know how you say I'm never gonna sell my old cans on eBay? Well, I just sold one to a talk show host. My ship came in, baby. $6 plus shipping. Oh, we just mentioned New Jersey. We mentioned Trump looked like a tiger in a podunk zoo in central New Jersey. A lot of you got mad. You said it's either northern New Jersey or southern New Jersey. Here, I was purposefully vague about where in New Jersey this podunk zoo was because the last thing I wanted was some actual Jersey zookeeper taking offense. You know, I don't need one of them waiting outside the building. I walk out and he's like, "Who's podunk now?" And throws a bunch of salamanders on me. Two years ago, I announced the birth of our daughter on Thanksgiving Corrections. And I told a story about how her first name is Adelaide, which is my grandmother's name, and why that was such an important name for us. And I forgot to mention that her middle name is Ruth, which is my wife's grandmother's name. And then I showed on Thanksgiving, I showed the corrections to my family and my in-laws. And my wife took me aside afterwards and go, "I think, you know, it really hurt my feelings that you would forget to say the Ruth part." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It just slipped my mind." And so last year's correction on Thanksgiving, I corrected the record. And I said her middle name was Ruth, and I told that story independently. And then I told her, assuming she would say, "Good job, you fixed it." But instead she said, "I don't think people pay attention. I think they only pay attention the first time." And I think they pay attention. I think everybody knows now her name's Adelaide Ruth, and we can just put it behind us. True story, the other day, my oldest son said to the Alexa, "Alexa, what are Seth Meyers' kids' names?" And Alexa said, Seth Meyers has 3 children. Their names are Ash Olson Myers, Axel Strahl Myers, Adelaide Myers. And I said, "Alexa, how do you not know that?" And she said, "I don't watch every corrections." Security guard John O'Malley won the corrections pool last week. Wasn't even here. So the saddest thing happened, which is Jim had to call and give him the good news. Poor Jim had to deliver that to O'Malley, who wins this thing, I feel like, every other week. O'Malley's walking out of here with a handful of cash. Still surprised every time he wins, because I saw him on Monday and was like, congratulations. I couldn't believe it, Seth. I mean, I'm sitting at home. I get a phone call from Jim. I'm like, is there an emergency? So I pick up the phone. Jim gives me the news. I'm excited. Jim's excited. Yeah, I was over the moon. I mean, I'm winning at this pool, so I feel like I'm as good at pools as my daughter Katie is at field hockey. John is very proud of his children. I am certain that if John is ever on duty when I'm attacked, the assailant will get by because he will be showing a picture of one of his children to a stranger on his phone. We did our 50th Joke Seth Can't Tell on Tuesday. Jenny and Amber surprised me. They changed the format to celebrate the 50th. A lot of jackals asked questions about this. One was Seth really surprised? I definitely was really surprised. Next question was he really angry? I was not really angry, but I did feel, for the purposes of the comedy, I should play as though I was a little bit angry that they'd pulled one over on me, which they had effectively done. I wasn't angry because I felt safe, because Amber and Jenny are very kind, very empathetic comedy writers, and I knew that they would go right up to the line without actually crossing it and putting me in a situation where I could get myself in trouble. So that was the nice part about it. Now, if there was a surprise sketch where I found out in real time that Mike Scollins had written stuff that I had to read on, I would know my career is over. It was me. I don't want to keep up the charade anymore. You even caught me on camera. I blame myself. How could I forget I'd given you the extra key? Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This is genuinely such a special part of the week for me. And I really like that you're here for this every week. I really like that I get to be here and do this every week. It's a very special thing to share with my crew. It's extra special tonight because there are people here who mean a great deal to me that aren't always here, and they know who they are. And well, Kenny won. Or at least he would have if it was over now. Will the show pay for this? See me next 2 weeks.